Welcome to Lesson 2 of Evangelism and Discipleship. We are looking at the biblical foundation for evangelism and discipleship. Now, the lesson objective is that by the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify biblical guidelines for evangelism and discipleship. We realize that the Bible is concerned with the message of reconciling men back to God, since the theme of the Bible is redemption. As such, we note indications in the Old and the New Testament that God is concerned with the way we reach others for Him and grow them as ardent followers of Christ. Now, this lesson traces the practice of evangelism and discipleship across the pages of the Bible with a view of developing patterns that may be repeated in the church's evangelistic and discipleship task. Now, let's look at evangelism and discipleship in the Old Testament. When we look at the Old Testament, we realize that Abraham and the children of Israel were meant to become a blessing to other nations. And this was a redemptive agenda of letting other nations know, love, and worship the God of Israel. We also note that the concept of introducing other nations to the God of Israel was repeated in other places of the Old Testament, where we find in 1 Chronicles 16:23 that God was calling man back to himself. The prophets of the Old Testament were also evangelistic in their outreach to other nations. We realize that, for instance, in the case of Isaiah the prophet, he says, "Come, let us reason together." That is Isaiah 1:18. We also realize that Jonah himself was an evangelistic prophet. The number 5 point is that we note indications of discipleship mandate in form of teaching people to obey God wholeheartedly. We realize that God could tell the children of Israel to teach their children to follow the ways of God from one generation to another. We want to look at evangelism and discipleship now in the New Testament, and we realize that the New Testament provides a good blueprint for evangelism and discipleship for the succeeding generations. And the following can be clearly seen. Number 1, we realize that the clear mandate for evangelism is given in so many scriptures of the New Testament, as indicated in our manuals. And we also realize that there are 5 principles given by the Word of God that guides evangelism. And we realize that the first principle is the principle of the command. Evangelism was commanded by Jesus, and that is in several Bible verses. We realize that, as Taylor says, the Great Commission is not an option to be considered, it's a command to be obeyed. So evangelism and discipleship is a command. The other principle is the principle of condition, where Jesus tells the disciples that the harvest fields is ready. And that means there are thousands of people who are lost in sin without hope. So evangelism is guided by this principle, the fact that there are so many souls that needs to come to the kingdom. The third principle we look at is the principle of concern, because evangelism must be done with a heart of compassion for the lost souls. Having this compassion, we realize that Jesus went all the way to Calvary because of the passion, the concern. As such, we need to have compassion. We need to have concern for the lost souls. The fourth principle, the principle of competition. If we do not win our global neighbors who hunger for change, other political and religious forces will win them. This spiritual hunger causes people to search for the truth. So it is our mandate that we reach them before they are reached by other political forces. The last principle is the principle of consummation, where we are told that this is the end of all things and global evangelism is the precondition of the return of Jesus on earth and the end of time, according to Matthew 24, verses 14. We note that Jesus made discipleship a priority. And if then we are his followers, we must make it a priority. And the Bible has shown us the patterns which we must follow if we are to disciple the nations for him. And these patterns will be discussed in lesson 4. Thank you.